Are we live?
I think we're live. Hang on.
Yay! Hey, bingo!
Yes.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Wendy.
Hiya, Chris.
I just wanted to acknowledge before I start that it's been an amazing event so far for what I've watched. All of the speakers have brought something different to the table, so to speak. And I've learned something from every single speaker that I've listened to so far. And I'm going to listen to everybody else once I've finished. So I want to thank you for bringing all these lovely people together and for them to share their expertise and their lived experience. I think it's amazing what you've done.
Thanks, Chris.
Thumbs up.
It's been a bit of a mission.
So I bet it has. I can tell and I can see. So thank you very much for doing this.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
My amazing fact, or not so amazing fact. So child sexual abuse and or exploitation is more prevalent than what anybody would like to own up to or even thinks. Because not only do we have child sexual abuse, exploitation within the family setting, we've got it within institutions, we have it with online abuse, we have it in every community, every institution, and every part of society. And when you look at it on that scale, that bigger picture, it's mind-blowing and it's also very frightening. And the reason why government here in the UK and probably all around the world don't want to shine the light on the bigger picture, the bigger landscape, is because it is too vast and it will literally cost too much money to deal with it. But that's what we're dealing with. That's what I see. That's what I hear from all different sectors that talk about this and who work within it. We shouldn't shy away from that. We should actually be tackling it head on. If we truly want to better protect children, and if we truly want to respond to it in the way that it needs to be responded to, then we should acknowledge that fact, whether it be amazing or not. We need to really tackle it head on. But, you know, that's what we're here for, to have our little bit of conversation around all of this. Now, my topic of a conversation today is about the power of one. And originally I was going to talk about that one person in your life that can help you change the trajectory that you may be on. So for some people, they might be on a pathway to crime because of what they've been through. And it just takes one person to turn that life around. It might be that you are on a journey and you can't see no hope in your life. Your self-esteem, your self-worth is so trashed that you can't see a future. You don't even know you've got a future. And it just takes that one person to come into your life to say, actually, what are your dreams? What are your aspirations? What is it you want from your life? Because that's all it took for me to hear. It just took that one person. So that's what I was going to speak about. But then I started listening to all of these lovely conversations that you've been having over the week. And I thought, self-worth, self-esteem. It belongs to self. So the power of one for me, after listening to all of these conversations this week, is about you. You are the power of one in your life. And what does that actually look like now that I've come to that conclusion? Yeah. So have you got any thoughts on what I've said so far, Wendy?
Yes, it's a devastating fact, isn't it? That I think what's shocking for me from my own personal experiences is the collusion within organizations. So they know it's going on, but they collude together to protect the organization rather than to protect the individual. That's has been my experience. And I think there's a new, I know you've been talking about it a lot. You'll have to tell me if I've got it wrong, but isn't there a new law that's come out where the people who know about it can also be charged, also be held accountable now?
So the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, one of their key recommendations was mandatory reporting. Now, there's a fantastic organisation called Mandate Now that have been driving for this mandatory reporting. The inquiry came up with a, as I said, recommendation. Now it's up to the government to find out what the best model of mandatory reporting is. So they've now put out a call for people's input into mandatory reporting. What should it look like? And once they've gathered all of that information, then they will come up with a model that they're going to implement. So people think it is law that they should report child sexual abuse, but in fact, it isn't quite law. In safeguarding models within organisations, there is a duty to report. However, you've just said, and I agree, because that's been my experience of, institutions will protect their reputation before they will report child sexual abuse and exploitation. So any model of mandatory reporting that is and will be taken on board after consultation should address this complicit cover-up of child sexual abuse and exploitation cases that are that need to be dealt with and not being dealt with. So yeah, you're right and you're wrong in what you're saying, but again, I am also probably right and wrong in what I've just said, but it is being looked at and it will be mandatory because the government have now committed to that recommendation and they're looking into it, but they're just coming up with the best model that will actually be applicable at grassroots level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So all of that, the whys and the wherefores, Mandate Now have done a hell of a lot of work in that area to actually make sure that it is tangible and it can be implemented at the grassroots level, because when people up here make policy, they don't actually understand the practicalities of it, and for it to work, it needs to be understood properly and it needs to be implemented correctly. So there's a lot of it's I would say it's all up in the air, but it's only up in the air as to what people think it should look like, but ultimately something will be implemented.
I think that's going to be very interesting. The other thing that came to mind when you were talking was this piece on self-esteem, is that, you know, when you've experienced a lot, you don't realize the damage on your self-esteem and your self-worth. And it's like, how can we help people to move into a space where we can help them to realize that it's the self-esteem and the trauma has damaged the self-esteem, and that they can actually turn that around and start working on it and raise their self-esteem.
Especially when they're in a place where they're like, they don't feel worthy, they don't feel good enough, they don't have aspirations or dreams because that's never been a reality for them, you know, it just isn't. And not knowing that you actually have choice. The amount of people, adult survivors, that come onto my course and they say, do I really have a choice? And I'm like, yeah. As children you didn't, as young people you might not have had choice, but as an adult you do have choice, and that in itself is scary for a lot of adult survivors of trauma, because they've never had that before. And for me to turn around and say you have choice, they're like, what does that mean? What does that look like? I said, you know, you can have aspirations, you can have dreams, but again, what does that mean? What does that look like? You are responsible for regaining your self-worth, regaining your self-esteem. hang on a minute, what do you mean I'm responsible? You mean I've got to now be an adult when I've never been a child or a young person? I've never been allowed to be any of that. I've just been someone else's tool for them to carry out their abuse, whether it was mental, whether it was physical, whether it was sexual, whether it was all of that. Yeah. So it's quite scary for an individual to be told that they've got choice, that they can dream, that they can achieve, that they do have, you know, the responsibility. And I like to turn that word around. And I think I might have touched on that last time I spoke to you last year. The word responsibility, it's the ability to respond. Yeah. So don't feel like it is a massive thing that you've got to have the responsibility of. It's the ability to respond differently, knowing that you've got choice as an adult, knowing that you are the driver of your own life and in your own life. It is scary, but once you do the work and once you realize all of these things, it just opens up your world. It blows it all apart, as in it's a good thing, not a bad thing. Once you realize that, you know, deal with the fear, deal with what is holding you back, understand and acknowledge what's holding you back. You are the driver of your own destiny, of your dreams, and you can realize them with help, with support. Yeah. But I just want to give everybody that hope if they're not sitting in that place at the moment. You know, I was there when I was 15. I really didn't understand that my life was my own. I had choice. I could realize dreams. And it took that one person to step into my life and ask me, what is it you want to do? And I'm like, what? What do you mean? What do I want to do? My life and my pathway is already mapped out for me. That's what I thought, because that's what I was told. That was my belief system. But in fact, no. What do you want to do with your life? And I'm like, and again, what do you mean? What does that look like? And she said to me, this particular person, this adult that gave me this key to the door, said, what do you like doing? If you can't understand what that means and what that looks like, what do you enjoy doing? And I said, well, I like cooking. I enjoy that. I enjoyed doing that at school. Well, would you want to make that career? What's that? What's a career? I come from a council estate. I've gone through all these kinds of abuses. I've never been told that I can amount to anything. What does that mean? What does that look like? And you're going to hear me keep saying that. She goes, well, you can actually turn something you enjoy doing into a career, into a job. Go and study at college. Excuse me, study at college? What do you mean? I said, I've got no money. I've got nowhere to live, because this is when the abuse all came to a head and I had to move out of home before something else happened. So I was like, literally had nowhere to live, no roof over my head, no way of earning money. And now this lady's telling me, you could go to college and study. And I'm like, yeah, but how does one make that happen? So this is why I said about the power of one and someone stepping in and actually helping you. Yeah, absolutely. She helped me identify a love for cooking. That wasn't my career in the end, by the way, but at the time it was, what is it that you love doing at that time? So, and then it was like, this lady helped me with the paperwork to get into college. She got me a bursary, you know, so she enabled me. I got myself out of the abusive household, and I had 3 jobs that I was working to get me through college. But this lady helped me at the time to get into college and get a bursary. So she enabled that to happen. When I turned around and said to my mum, you need to sign these papers to say that you're on benefits and we don't earn any money in the household. And my mum went, I ain't signing that. And I said, yeah, but that's it. If the only thing you do for me is sign this paperwork to allow all of this to happen. Please do it. You haven't done much else. Could you just do this? And she did. She signed that paperwork. And then that's what got me the financial help for the college place. I had to do everything else, but at least that enabled me to do that. So there's the power of one in that story. But for me, this bigger conversation that I'm having with you today is about the power of one in your own life. Have you got anything to comment on before I carry on?
Yeah, as you were talking, Chris, I was thinking about predictability. I was thinking about, I've been doing a lot of research recently, and I think what I've been really struck by is how similar the consequences are of what we've been through in terms of our behavior and terms of the things we get into. And I don't know why I find it quite shocking that from what we've experienced, there is a predictability in terms of outcomes of what people can expect to experience. So I guess I see part of the summit and our conversations are a way to wake up comes to mind, but that is completely the wrong word, but to become more conscious, to start thinking in a different way. And I guess the power of one is the mentoring of where that comes into that, to help people to think in a different direction.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Because obviously, Wendy, we know about the adverse childhood experiences report, that they think that if you've gone through all of this, you know, you will have these health outcomes and this will be your life's path. We've all proved that isn't necessarily the case and is not the case. Yeah. However, we should use that information, that if you have gone through these horrible trauma experiences, whether it is from abuse or whether it is from losing a mum and dad from a young age, whatever the trauma is, if there is this knowledge of this impact, then step in and change it for these children and young people. That's what we should be doing. Yeah, is being the power of one, being the key to unlocking this trajectory that they may end up on and changing that pathway for young people. That's what we should all be doing. And hopefully these conversations will be part of that learning and awareness.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to go back to the power of one that I wanted to bring to today. I think it's the shame that we hold on to as part of the abuse that we've gone through that actually tells us internally, or shows us, or we think, we perceive, we are then a failure in some way. You know, we're a failure in relationships. We're a failure as a mother or a father. We're a failure in coping with everyday life. We're not, but that's what the trauma and the shame might show up for us in our lives. So we need to be able to, as I said before, recognize it, acknowledge it, and change it. And often when we're living our lives, we don't have that light shone on it. We don't understand it. So therefore, if we don't know about it, we can't acknowledge it. So I just want to say, do you feel deep shame? What does that look like for you? How does it resonate with you? Can you challenge it? Because that shame is not ours in the first place. Yeah, it's for the perpetrator of whatever abuse you've gone through. It's for them to have back. So we need to acknowledge, do we suffer from that? Are we holding on to that? And then we have the power within us to hand that back. And we need to hand it back in order for us to start healing, because it ain't ours. It's not ours, it's theirs. Now, my friend Emma Jane, she's just created this whole movement. It's not my shame. and she's got it on a t-shirt, and so many people now are buying that t-shirt because it's freeing. It allows you to go, hang on a minute, I've gone through this, I'm living with the impact, but it's not mine. Why am I holding on to it? Why am I allowing it to affect all areas of my life? Well, you're allowing it to affect all areas of your life because you don't know about it. You don't know that you're actually holding on to it. So I just want to bring a light to that, and to actually now challenge people, especially victims and survivors of any type of abuse, especially sexual abuse. This is often an outcome. Shame is often an outcome of you going through that, and it doesn't belong to you. So we've got to acknowledge it, and we've got to look at the damage that it's causing to all areas of our life and go, oh my God, that's not mine. So why am I allowing it to affect all areas? I'm going to hand it back. How do I hand it back? Does anything that I've said there resonate?
Yeah, for sure. I'm just thinking, what might shame look and feel like for somebody?
Yeah. So for me, what I've experienced myself and what I've spoken about to others is it could be disordered eating, bulimia, anorexia, emotional eating. You could be obese as a result of that. It could be self-harm, self-medication, drugs, alcohol. It could be anger management issues. It could be you've been in a string of abusive relationships or one-night stands, all of that. It could be any one of those or a multitude of those. And for me, it was bulimia, and it is exercise. And I've had to try and deal with both of those and bring balance into my life. So I'm not dealing out judgment here in any way, shape or form. I'm just saying, because of that deep-rooted shame, we often deal with the cause, which is the shame. We deal with it via the symptoms that show up in our life, and to push down the feelings that we might be experiencing, we go to one of those ways of coping or a multitude of those coping mechanisms. So the bulimia that I suffered throughout my, teenage years and young adult years, the fact that the act of being bulimic, it gave me a sense of release. And I didn't understand that there was a physical damage to what I was doing until one day I read and I heard the acid can actually cause cancer over time because it erodes the esophagus. It causes damage to the lining of the throat. And my God, that was a wake-up call for me, because I'm like, why am I doing this? Why? So something that was a coping mechanism, and I had shame around that secret of being bulimic. There was a lot of shame for me. I didn't want to own up to that. But it was a coping mechanism, and is a coping mechanism for many. I was actually causing myself more damage. And I'm like, one day I was just like, why are you doing that? I literally, that was it. Why are you doing this? And the causal reason was that deep shame that I was holding on to. So I was turning up into the world, like many of your speakers have said, with a mask on. Everything's all right. I'm okay. Life is great. Da, 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 da. And then behind closed doors, I was, being bulimic. And it was just my way of purging, not being heard, purging the deep-rooted anger that I couldn't deal with, purging everybody, basically society keeping me silent because I couldn't express what had happened to me, how it was impacting me. And also, if I did come out with all of this, how would I be judged? Yeah. So there's a lot in that bulimia for me. And for anyone that has a coping mechanism, there will be all of this complexity around it as well. So that is why specialist support in helping you deal with everything that you're going through is really important and should be accessible. Anything that I've said there that might be a trigger or something you've got to comment on, Wendy?
Yeah, I was thinking about how did it show up for me, is what I was thinking as you were talking. And I became a workaholic. I just threw myself into work.
Yeah.
Threw myself into work. And because it was the only way I could I couldn't handle personal relationships, but I could handle them at work because you had a beginning and an end of the day. So you knew, like being in care, you knew that there was a structure to it, so I could sort of psychologically manage it. But I think it manifested itself for me in work, and it still does to a certain degree. I have to be really careful.
Yeah, I'm the same. I just work. The quiet times, the down times for me are like where I overthink, and it's not a nice place to be. Wasn't, but it is now because I've had that therapy. But you know, even though I felt I was getting a release and I was in control of my life because of the bulimia, when I realized that there was a physical output, i.e. it's hurting me, I then realized, well, why are you hurting yourself? Haven't you been hurt enough? Why are you continually hurting yourself? And when that dawned on me, I'm like, no, this needs to change. Something has to change. Why am I failing? Why am I punishing myself for my perceived failings? They weren't failings. They were me trying to cope, trying to survive. That's what I was trying to do. And in fact, that self-sabotage, I didn't deserve. No one deserves. No one deserves. You're going to have to tell me about time, Wendy, because I can rattle on forever, as you know.
But I love you rattling on.
Yeah. So for me,
insightful.
It's all about finding healthier ways to deal with the impact of the trauma that we've gone through. And what does that look like? Well, it was being able to acknowledge what I was feeling. How was that showing up for me? And then how do I deal with this? Yeah. Because I knew logically that I couldn't take my anger out on everybody and anybody, because that would get me into trouble, potentially with the law. And that has got a lot of people into trouble. So logically, I knew for myself that I couldn't just go around and hit everybody and anybody for no reason, even though that's how I felt. I felt very angry at the world, but I felt very angry at certain people. And again, being married to a police officer, I know that that is not the way to go around dealing with how you're feeling and how you're thinking. Yeah. So I needed to take that responsibility for me and to sort out my life. I needed to show up for myself. So I needed to show myself love, kindness, and I knew that I deserved health and happiness. But again, what does that look like? How do you go about it? So I started looking at what are my symptoms, but what were the causes of those symptoms? What did I need to do for me in my life? And that led me on to becoming the health and wellness coach that I am, the trauma-informed health and wellness coach that I am. Over the last 20 years, for me personally, I've read many books like you, gone on many courses, I've spoken to lots of people. And in order for me to help myself mentally, physically, and emotionally, I had to look at my mindset, what I want out of my life. I've had to look at my nutrition. I've had to look at bringing balance into my fitness, because rather than running all of the time, which I was physically doing to release the energy and the anger, I needed to actually go, you're actually doing too much and that's causing you damage. So with the osteoarthritis in my hips, I've had 2 hip replacements. So again, I've had to, you know, just look at what I was doing. And that balance for me meant retraining and partaking in Pilates and breathing, and not reverting to or resorting to those high impact forms of exercise. I still do that, but not to the extent that I was, i.e., I now balance all of that out with Pilates and just walking and just being in nature and learning to be still in my life. Yeah. So every single one of us, and I've heard that from every speaker I've listened to this week, it's about what is right for you, and what is right for me is not right for you and is not right for the next victim and survivor of trauma. So we've got to find our own paths, but in doing that, listening and learning from others will give you the ideas and will give you the keys for you.
Absolutely. Chris, what are some things that people can do that would help them to on their journey?
So for me as a health and wellness coach, it is making sure that you bring some kind of movement into your life. Yeah. So if you are a stationary person, get moving. If you are a very high, intense activity person, dial it down a little bit and bring something more calming, whatever that happens to be. Yeah. It's look at your nutrition. Are you eating for what your body and your mind needs rather than what you want all of the time? Yeah. So we do need the balanced nutrition in our health and our wellness. So our body and our brains need protein, good fats, carbohydrates. We need that variety of vegetables to get the minerals and the vitamins that the body needs to not just survive, but physically thrive. We need to really look at that. So movement, nutrition, and mindset are probably my 3 main ones to go to bring that balance and that health into your mental and your physical, even your spiritual self. But learn to listen to yourself. And I've heard you over and over again this week, Wendy, say, I live in my mind. That's you. I've heard it. I don't connect with my body. So I urge people to connect mind and body and really listen, because I didn't listen to my psoas muscle. I didn't listen to what it was telling me, and I ended up with 2 hip replacements. Yeah, because I didn't listen. Not only did I not listen, I didn't know to listen. So now people are telling you to listen and get in tune with your mind and your body.
Yeah.
Go and understand what that means and learn what it is you need to do. Not you, Wendy, but the people listening.
Oh, I think
Learn
it
what
is
you
me.
need to do.
I think it is me. I think if there's one thing I'm going to take away from this summit is that I've got to, I'm now ready. I think that's the thing. You have to be ready.
Yes, 100%. I agree with that. Not only do you need to know what it is and what it looks like, you need to be ready to do the work. And I think at the end of all my notes that I've written here, let me just go to the conclusion. It's just like you need to start with those small steps to rebuild your self-esteem. You need to like acknowledge every achievement that you are able to do on a day-to-day basis. Acknowledge them, pat yourself on the shoulder, make sure that you celebrate them, whatever they are, whatever they look like. So if you are in the deepest, darkest pits of depression, for example, getting up and having a wash is fantastic. If you are like us, where we are able to get up most days and just get on with life, whatever you do, like this talk that we're having now, let's celebrate that as a good thing. Yeah, because we're going to bring awareness and we're going to make sure that someone's going to learn from this conversation. So let me and you celebrate the fact that we've come together and had this conversation. So whatever your little wins are, celebrate them. Recovery is hard and it needs effort. Yep, it is a journey. There's no end destination. It's about learning about yourself, nurturing yourself, investing in yourself, loving yourself, ultimately breaking the cycle of what is holding you back, stepping out of your comfort zone and into your potential. Yeah.
Nice.
The power of one starts with you and me. We are the power of one in our own lives, but we are also the power of one in other people's lives, just because we've had this conversation today.
I think you've got a new book there, Chris.
Yeah, haven't got the time or the energy, I'm afraid. So if you want to help me write it, Wendy, let's do that as a collab.
Right, I wanted to ask you about your charity.
Yes, so Survivors of Abuse was founded in 2016. It's charity number 116712. For those that might not believe that I'm actually a proper charity, because I am. I'm a trustee of the charity, I'm a director of the charity, and I facilitate the 8-week course that we deliver through the charity. We're always looking for volunteers. We are always looking for fundraisers. We are always looking for people to get behind the cause and push the cause forwards. What do? We help adult survivors of any type of abuse and trauma recover holistically through the 8-week program. And there's 7 pillars that we cover. And the cleaner, the CLEANER, each letter of that program means something. We look at mindset, we look at stress management, we look at nutrition, we look at fitness, we look at the mind-body connection, and we look at all of those pieces of the puzzle of that mnemonic cleaner, how it can impact your mental, physical, and spirit, your health as a whole, how it can bring about a positive benefit and change in your life. That's what the charity does in a nutshell.
Brilliant, fantastic. Where's it based?
In Southeast England, obviously.
Yeah.
When I say obviously,
Obviously.
I don't do it online at the moment because
Okay.
I feel that the
In the room.
The group
in
the room is the magic.
Yeah.
What they give to each other, what they learn, what they share. And when you're in a room, you're in that safe space, rather than if you're online, your safe space is your house. You don't want to bring that trauma into your house, in my opinion. You need to be away from that so that you can separate what you're doing over here to what you're doing over here, because you need that downtime, you need that processing. Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, absolutely. You have to do you have to do what's comfortable for you and what you think's right with the people that you're working with.
Absolutely. And I understand that people do online stuff and it's very beneficial for people. But for me and what I know from my group, this is my model that works.
Yeah, because otherwise people would pick it up anyway, then it wouldn't be safe. It's just how it goes. And that's obviously your gift of being in the room. Thank you for sharing, Chris. I always love speaking to you. We should do it more often.
We are. You're going to be on our podcast. Beverly and I said,
right,
we're booking her in.
Lovely. Yeah, that would be great.
Tell your story. We need to give you a platform.
Yeah. Yes, that would be good. I'm not doing it in this summit because it's just too much.
No, it's too much. You can't, can you, Wendy? You can't be in your emotional head and your logical head.
No.
So you can't be think as detailed as this and as fantastic as this, what you're doing, and be your emotional self show up as well. It's hard.
But it's like all of it, isn't it? I'm still processing. I'll be processing this conversation, and I'm still processing other things that I've heard during the week that I didn't realize. I think what baffles me is like 54 now. Why is it taking me so long to figure this out? Why? And I'm still learning things. I'm like, I should have known this a long time ago. I don't know.
Why should you? Why should you? Why should you know it? Why should you?
Well,
why should you?
Because
we shouldn't. We shouldn't have to be doing this, Wendy. We
Yeah.
shouldn't have had such shit childhoods. Sorry for swearing. We shouldn't have this impact. We shouldn't have to do this. But the thing is, we have had this happen to us. There is an impact. And now we don't want to live with that impact because we know about it. We want to live the best lives we can. So that is why we are dealing with this.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah. Well, if we can pass this down to other people, younger, where I'm at anyway.
Yeah.
And that's
the same age as me, practically. Yeah, that's a good thing that we can pass all of this on, and hopefully they can get interventions at an earlier age, so that they don't carry this for as long as we have.
Yeah, or pass it on. That's And
that's another.
On
that note, that's another conversation.
There's just so many different. Emma Jane says this, isn't Emma Jane? She says it's just that whenever I have a conversation, and you're always there, it's just so complex. There are so many different parts you could talk about. Layers.
This,
it's just it's endless. It's just absolutely endless. And just coming back to what you said at the beginning, is the figures are shocking. That it's, if anything, it's an epidemic. This is a worldwide.
It's endemic. It's so tangible. We all know someone. If we're not a victim survivor, we all know someone. Everybody knows someone, and everyone knows a perpetrator, unfortunately.
That's the scary thing. And I read, there was something I said the other day, and I came off, and I could have kicked myself. Was that I said, it's someone's father, it's someone's boyfriend. Then when I came off, I thought it's also someone's mother, it's someone's sister, it's someone's wife,
someone's aunt, someone's uncle, someone's grandma, someone's nan. It can be anybody, and everybody can be a perpetrator, and anybody and everybody could be a victim. It's that endemic, and it needs to be spoken about in those terms, because we get the latest thing that's going wrong or is the hot topic of conversation, like grooming gangs or organized networks, or this institution over here or this community over there, and it ain't just one thing. It's the bigger picture. It's the bigger picture, and we've got to keep shining the light on that.
We all do our bit.
We do. That's all we can do. All we can
do. Chris, thank you so much. We're going to have to stop here, because otherwise we're going to keep going.
I know. And you've got others coming on.
I know. Take care, lovely. Thanks for your time.
And you. Speak to you soon.
Take care, Chris.
Bye.
Bye.